I've had a decent career in this space and pretty much considered a grandpa at this point. And throughout my career, I've had a lot of life changes. I've moved 3 or 4 times. I've had a kid. I've had pretty much any kind of life change you can imagine come my way. And what that did is make me realize what I needed to have in my environment to stay focused. I went through a lot of different changes, and throughout those changes, I would look back and realize something was off or something was good because of something that was missing or something that was present. And so today, we're gonna be focusing on what you should have in your sales environment. And to proceed this video, it's not about copying the things that I've done, because what I've done in the past or what I need to have in my environment to stay focused might not be something that you need to have. If anything, it could do the opposite. Maybe things that help me will distract you. But specifically, what I really want to get across are that there are small things that we need to focus on in our environments that compound, that have long-term big impact over our careers. So today, we're going to go over the environment that you're taking calls in, that you're working in, that you're selling in, and making sure it's optimized for you so you're always operating at peak performance. Let's dive in. Roll intro. Okay, so setting agenda, 3 things for today, what we're gonna avoid in our physical environment, what we're gonna include in our physical environment, and then a principle I recommend for our mental environment. Getting straight into it, things to avoid in your physical environment. There's no structure as to how these are correlated or relate. Realistically, it's just gonna be me bullet pointing things off, and so excuse me if it's a little fragmented, but number 1 is we wanna avoid other people. We want to make sure that other people are not around us when we're taking sales calls, specifically other people that are not in sales. And there's a couple of reasons for it. Number 1, we talked about movement before and having movement in your background. We want to avoid that. But let's say the people aren't even going through your background or in your background. Let's just say it's friends or family or strangers around you. I've taken sales calls at coffee shops. I've taken sales calls at my parents' house before if I was visiting them. And there's something that I never would have thought about it until I experienced it. But it's that people who don't know sales or don't understand sales, when you're getting into really deep conversations with people, it's very weird to do that with other people present. It's really strange to ask I don't want to say salesy questions, but questions that are sales tactics. It's very strange to get into that with other people around. And what starts to happen is you almost want to avoid having those deep conversations that realistically help you get the sale and help people in the long run, but it feels awkward to do in front of other people. It's almost like having a date with people watching. And so the first thing I recommend you avoid is just people. When you're on sales calls, do it alone. Have no one else. I have Tristan here in the recording booth, but I can tell you it'd be so much more awkward if I had 15 people, 10 people just listening in and staring at me and just thinking, what is Paul saying? Why is he saying that? And so in general, avoid other people, because people are going to make us feel like we can't go down the routes we need to go down in sales calls. And if we can't go down the routes we need to go down, then we're going to miss sales opportunities. We're going to miss closes. And ultimately, being around other people, it's going to hinder you from selling. So optimal environment number 1, what to avoid? People. Sounds pessimistic. It sounds like I'm a troll living under a bridge, but trust me, it's true, it helps. Second thing to avoid in your physical environment is, and this is like a soft one or an intangible one, but cross-using spaces. And so working in personal spaces or doing personal stuff in workplaces. And the reason for that, let's just think of something that we've all experienced before. Have you ever gone down to your kitchen, and apparently my kitchen's downstairs in my mind because it is, but anyway, gone down to your kitchen, and you walk into the kitchen, you're not hungry, but before you know it, you're just like opening up the snack drawer or cupboard, and you're like, you maybe catch yourself and you're like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not hungry. Why am I in here? It's because your body or your brain is programmed to unconsciously think we're in the kitchen, so we need to eat. And the reason it thinks that or does that is because every time you've gone to the kitchen, you've trained it to think that you've eaten when you've gone to the kitchen. Our bodies and brains are really wired to do different things based on the environment that we're in. If we go to the gym, it doesn't matter if you're groggy or tired beforehand. Once you get to the gym, you probably wake up a little bit. Your body knows to start pumping blood to get the heart rate going, right? Before you even start working out, your body's already anticipating the workout, getting ready for the workout. When we go to the kitchen, we have the stack drawer. When we go to the spa, we relax. Our body just naturally knows it's relaxation time. And where it gets tricky is when we're living and working in the same place, like most remote sales reps do. One example, and this is just something, never, ever, ever catch yourself doing this, but let's say you work in the same room that you sleep. So your bed is somewhere in the room, and like we talked about in the last lesson, you shouldn't have your bed in the background. But let's say your bed's over there, your desk is here. Never catch yourself getting off a call, getting your phone and checking Slack on your bed, getting away from your computer, checking Slack on your bed so you can just relax for a second. Because what's gonna happen is over time, you're gonna start trying to go to bed and you're gonna start thinking about work. And when it happens, you're gonna think, why do I only think about work when I go to bed? But it's because you trained your brain to think that way. If you go to your bed and lay in your bed and have your phone and work when you're in your bed, your brain's naturally gonna think bed is work. So when I get to bed, I have to get in work mode. And so we never cross-pollinate. Your bed, sex, and sleep, those are the only two things that it's meant for. In the vice versa kind of regard, never get to your workstation and do personal stuff at your workstation. If you have to go shopping for home accessories, or if you have to buy your son or daughter clothing, or do anything personal, take your computer, take your phone, do it somewhere else. Take your computer to a counter in the kitchen. Take your computer somewhere where you don't take work calls so that that area is personal. But if you start doing that, what you're gonna realize is if you shop on Amazon at your computer station, at your desk, where you're taking sales calls, you're gonna find yourself having a really hard time getting into focus mode, deep work mode when you have to. And it's because you've programmed your brain to think it's okay to do personal work at the desk that I work at. And so we don't wanna cross-pollinate spaces. Kitchen should be eating, living room should be relaxing, bed should be sex and sleep. Desk should be nothing but work. Program yourself to be a work machine when you get to your desk. It's a superpower, I promise. It's a long-term investment, but don't do any work outside of your desk and don't do any personal work at your desk. It's gonna program you in all the right ways, I promise. Your unconscious is gonna thank me later. Third concept, third thing to avoid in our physical areas, and this is really tied to number 2, not cross-pollinating spaces, but it's not putting distracting things in our work environment. And so I see this all the time. Let's say you actually have an office at home. I see people putting TV screens in their office, or on their desk, phone stands that put their phone up so that they can see every single notification that comes in, or iPads right by their monitors. And they put all these things around that are just things that can hit dopamine for you really well. And what happens is when work is getting a little hard, if you will, our brain, when we're not getting dopamine from work or from sales calls, it's gonna start looking for dopamine elsewhere. And if we have a phone in front of us or a TV right there or a Rubik's Cube on the desk, whatever it is, if we have anything else that can get us a quicker dopamine hit than work, our brain's naturally gonna go to that. And so third thing to avoid, anything distracting. Realistically, the rule for this is just don't have screens in front of you everywhere that can take your attention. My ideal office, what I used to actually have when I was on sales calls, I don't do this anymore. I don't have this kind of office anymore because now I'm recording things, I'm on team calls, it has to kind of look good in the background. But when I was on sales calls, my ideal office was straight up my desk, one monitor, my camera setup, and then nothing else, and a chair. But there was no background stuff. There was literally not a single other piece of furniture inside of the office other than the desk and the chair. And so when I got in, it was like there was nothing else to do besides work. And so when I was in my office, all I did was work. And I never even brought my phone into my office. If I was going into my office, I would leave my phone in the kitchen so that there was nothing else in that office that could take my attention other than my workstation. And so I would just machine out work. It was a superpower. And it's because I didn't set myself up for failure by doing those two things. I didn't cross-pollinate space and I didn't put distractors in my office. So third thing to avoid, distractions. Number 4, it's pretty much the exact same thing as number 3, but it's kind of like a technicality. A lot of people think that it's not a distraction, so they just do it. But avoid a dual monitor setup in sales specifically. In sales, it's not like we're in copywriting or in media buying or in content production. In sales, having a second monitor is nothing but setting yourself up for failure, because a couple things will happen. Number 1, maybe you have that silhouette kind of shot that we talked about before. If you have a monitor with a camera and it's on your side, it just doesn't look good. But even if you're using an external mic, you have 2 monitors. The thing is, if you're on a sales call, you're gonna be moving your eyes. It's gonna look like you're doing different things. Even if you're just looking at the prospect, you're not gonna be looking at the camera. And on top of that, the worst part is you have a screen that can just take your attention. You have a screen that literally its only job is to show you different things that can take your attention. Notifications from Slack, text notifications, anything that's not the sales call. And so what starts to happen is you are listening to a prospect on one screen and you're looking at them, but then your eye just moves over there because something moves and your eye naturally looks at movement. That's what humans do. And so 4th thing, and this goes, again, I said no TVs, no phones, no iPads looking at you, whatever, be it in the office. The 4th thing to avoid is no second screen, which is a screen, but people think for some reason that it's better. Ideal setup, all we want. Again, desk, workstation, chair. That's the ideal office. In general, all 4 of these can just be summed up by don't set yourself up for failure. Just literally an office is an office. There's a reason that corporate America 9-to-5 work has cubicles with pretty much nothing else in the cubicle other than workstation, it's because it makes you more efficient. It's just more efficient. And so the way we can go about it is, if we have an at-home office, just make it an office. Keep as little distraction in there as possible. I promise you, it's like a super skill that for some reason people don't even think about because it's so simple that people just overlook it. And especially with YouTube nowadays, everyone's getting into like office setups with all these different things and the camera and the fireplace in the background, and it looks so extravagant and luxurious, but no one's getting jack shit done when they're in those offices. Ideal setup, just avoid distractions. Have nothing in your office except for a workstation. I promise you, you're gonna be mind blown at how productive you are. People are gonna ask you why, and you're gonna be like, I just don't fucking put anything else in my office. Anyway, that's topic number one, what to avoid. Topic number two, now that we have everything out of your office, I am gonna tell you to start putting some stuff into your office, into your environment, that for me have always helped. The first one, it's an intangible, but it's music. Really quick, just play out the day of a sales day, but you're on sales calls for 6, 7, 8, 10 hours a day. And for that 10 hours, it's pretty much pitch silence outside of hearing someone else speak or yourself speak. And that can get really dry really quick. And on top of that, if you're talking to dry or boring prospects, what starts to happen is your day just gets so bland. And for me, something that kept me in pocket and really just helped me kind of stay in flow is having headphones on where I heard my prospects, but I would also have Spotify at like 30% volume. And whatever kind of mood I was in, if it was rap, if it was piano, whatever be it, I'd always have music in the background. And people ask me like how my sales calls were always so consistent because I never mood matched my prospects. If they were boring, I didn't get boring, or it just because I was stable, I was consistent. And I think music was a really big factor for that. I always had music in the background of my sales calls. Big no-no is having music on external speakers because then the mic might pick it up, and that's so unprofessional. But that's why on sales calls, if you ever saw sales call recordings of me, I always had headphones or AirPods or something playing music in the background. And for me, it was a really good way of just staying consistent on calls. Second thing to avoid in your office is natural light. I'm not kidding. This is a game changer. It's probably the most important thing. Even now to date, if I'm looking at where I want to move to, the first thing I look at is where am I going to work, how much natural light gets into that room. And I said in the last lesson, don't have windows in the background, but I'm an absolute advocate for having windows around where you're working at, to your side, in front of you, whatever be it, and just having light hit your skin. There's so many studies on this too. Even if you just look outside and see greenery, there are studies that show that improves mentality. And even if it's just taking in the sun and feeling sun, that increases serotonin, which literally fights depression and anxiety. Serotonin and vitamin D are such powerful things that you can utilize. When I first started my business a long time ago and got in the online world, I worked in a dungeon. You couldn't tell if it was 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. In the middle of the day, it was complete blackness inside. And it crushed me. It was like working every single day. It's something I loved doing, but I hated doing because of the environment that I was in. And so any chance I could get on a nice day to go outside and not work, I took it. I actually still remember to this day, just to get natural sunlight, if it was a nice day, I would take my computer to a bar and I would take sales calls outside at like an outdoor bar, which was so bad because of everything I just told you to avoid when taking sales calls in your optimal environment. But on top of that, I just wanted to be outside. I wanted natural light. Humans are not programmed to be inside all day long. We're programmed to want to be outside and experience nature. And I think a lot of that, most of that to me, is at least taking in the sun. Having an office that gets natural light in, I promise you, it's going to make a 10-hour workday feel like 2 hours. It's such a game changer. But thing number two, if you're looking for an office, or if you somehow can, if you can arrange rooms in the house, if whatever it is, or if you need to rearrange your bedroom, if you're taking sales calls in your bedroom, somehow configure it to where you have natural light on you all day long. Third thing that I recommend you have in your physical environment is a sit-stand desk. It's not actually for the health benefits. Of course, there are health benefits. Standing for a few minutes every hour, moving the hips, moving the knees. We'll be super happy when we're older at the fact that we did that. But more so, it's actually because you sound different and speak differently when you're standing up. If you actually go to the sales floor of pretty much any top performing sales company, there's a rule on their floor for every single one that when they're on the phone, they have to be standing up. And it's because when you stand up, your diaphragm actually opens up differently. And that open diaphragm allows your voice to kind of have a deeper presence or carry more. And when that happens, people take that as confidence. There's been so many studies done on it. And companies that do that have sales floors where people have to stand, they always have a higher closing rate than companies that don't. And I think candidly, it's because of two things. Number one, diaphragm opening up, feeling more confident. But number two is it just keeps energy levels up. If you're sitting all day long and you get sedentary and you get kind of lazy and you start sleep, aside from even the micropsychology of like laying back and kind of getting too comfy, if you're just sitting all day long and get sedentary, energy levels go down. But if you're standing and moving and talking and and just blood is flowing, again, 10-hour day, you'd be amazed at how much quicker the day feels or how much shorter the day feels when you have energy and you have sun coming in, you're standing up and you have a little music in the background rather than sitting in a dark office all day playing new music, just listening to silence. The drastic change between those two different days, if you really think about it, trust me, game changer. Last thing I recommend having in your physical environment is some kind of aromatherapy. My process to this day still, ever since I started in business and all the way to now, is before I start working, I will go into my office and I just actually switched to incense, but it's always been candles. But I'll go in and I'll light now an incense, but again, was candles. I would light a candle, I would leave my office, I'd hang out with my kiddo for a bit, I'd get some water, maybe make some coffee. And when I got back in my office, it smelled, and it still smells only like sandalwood. And I've programmed over years of doing this that sandalwood is, when I smell it, my brain's just ready to go. And so it's called classical conditioning. I'm sure you guys have heard of it before, but classically conditioning yourself, like we talked about with physical environment, it's the same thing with sense. If you smell really good food being cooked, your body gets hungry because it knows it's almost food time. If you smell lavender, you get tired. And for me, it's sandalwood, but for you, find something that when you smell it, your brain knows it's work time. And it doesn't happen right away. It's one of those things where it takes months or years to condition. But aromatherapy, fourth thing that I recommend you have in your physical environment. Third topic is mental environment. And I know that pretty much everything we've talked about is not distracting you, not getting dopamine hits from other things. Aromatherapy, conditioning yourself to think different things and vitamin D, and everything has been mental, but they were all physical inputs or removing physical inputs. This is a completely intangible input, but my last principle, the last thing I want to leave you with in this lesson is always have something to work toward on your calendar. The game of sales, after whether it's 6 months, a year, or 2 years, eventually, just like anything else, it can start to feel monotonous. It can start to feel like you're just doing the same thing over and over and over. And aside from even thinking about vertically growing inside of a company, if you think about the fact that you're taking sales calls day in and day out, eventually you start to think, is this what my life is? Is my life just taking sales calls? And you start to get close to what's called burnout, that feeling of mental exhaustion of where am I going? What am I doing this for? And my favorite line about burnout that I've ever heard, it's actually from Grant Cardone, out of all people, is that burnout occurs when you don't have an end in sight. And what most people have as their end in sight is growth or career growth, whether it's becoming a COO or I'm going to do this until I have my own business or until I'm the sales manager. These are great goals, but they're long-term goals. To think I'm going to take sales calls until I'm a COO, which could take 10 years, that's a really long path and projection to think of. That means I've got 10 more years of just taking sales calls every single day. I can guarantee you that if you only have long-term goals on the calendar and mentally that you're taking sales calls to, you're gonna burn out. And the only prevention I've ever seen to this is actually something I learned from a buddy of mine named Eric. He's 62, multi-decamillionaire, and he, at the beginning of every single year, has every vacation, long weekend trip, everything for the year planned out. And what it does is it breaks his years into almost sprints like you would see in software. But he knows that he's doing 3, 4, 5 weeks of hard as shit, full focus work, and then he's got a week or two in the Bahamas or in Aruba or wherever he's going. And it's the epitome of work hard, play hard. But instead of knowing that he's doing the same thing, which he's been doing for 30 years and he's going to do for another probably 20 years, instead of knowing that he's just doing that day in and day out for eternity, he's only doing it for 3 weeks or 5 weeks. And then he gets to play hard. And I'm not saying that you have to have something that, it's like this is a means to an end. You're working so you can enjoy time and go vacation. And if anything, a lot of the vacations I go on or a lot of the time I take off, or especially that my buddy Eric takes off, I don't actually want to do it. But it's something that breaks up the years, the weeks, the months, and it mentally makes an endpoint that avoids burnout. You just don't burn out when you know you only have 3 weeks of hard input or 6 weeks of hard input to put into before you go on a long 4-day lake trip. It doesn't matter what you're doing and it doesn't matter how often you do it. Just make sure you have endpoints. Make sure that there's always something on the calendar that you're working toward. Because if you know you're working for a finite amount of time, your brain can handle that. Your body can handle that. You can also know I only have to work for X amount of time, so I'm going to go as hard as I can for that X amount of time. If you don't have an endpoint, it's really hard to think I'm just going to work as hard as I can for the rest of my life. It's almost like saying I'm just going to sprint without ever stopping. But even a marathon, it has an endpoint. And so any kind of competition always has a duration of time or a distance or some kind of barometer to say, this is the end. In our career, we don't think of it that way. We think the end is just death or the next game that we're gonna play, and there's always gonna be another game, another level of the game that we can play. So what we have to do is we kind of have to set those specific timelines, durations, the 90 minutes of football or the 4 quarters of basketball or the 9 innings of baseball. We have to have something that says, after this, we're done. And the only thing that I've ever seen work well as a long-term solution to that is having things on the calendar to look forward to. Having sprints in your life of, I'm gonna work X amount of time, and then I'm gonna take Y amount of time off. That principle, when I learned that was life-changing for me. It was probably the largest work-life harmony principle I've ever learned. And I'm not kidding, it probably should have its own lesson. I know it's topic number 3 today, but if anything that you take from this, just know it holds deep in my heart. I hope one day it holds deep in yours because I hope it has the same impact on you as well. But with that said, you're ready to rock. That's the modern day suit setup. That's the optimal environment. That's the physical environment. That's the mental environment. You have the modern day suit. Your Zoom setup looks clean. You know how to go to companies and find sales opportunities. You know how to audit them, how to assess risk, how to look at comp plans, the golden ratio. Now it's time to get on sales interviews and start actually talking to companies. So next lesson of this phase, how do we crush a sales interview? How do we make sure that we are getting as many offers as possible so that we have leverage, so that we can find a company that we want to work with, that we want to actually crush it with. And then from there on out, pretty much time to get in sales calls. I'm excited. Phase 2 is coming to an end soon. We have 2 more lessons, how to crush a sales interview. And then the last lesson, pre and post game rituals, things to make sure we're doing every day to stay in pocket. We'll talk about that. And then other than that, phase 3, here we come. It's time to get on sales calls soon. I will see you in the next lessons. Until then, happy hunting.